Hello everyone, I'm Gaurav Mittal, Senior Software Engineer with Northship Technology, and I'm excited to talk to you about how AI is transforming how organizations manage and transform their data. So today we'll talk a little bit about what ETL is, what the problems with traditional ETL systems is. We look at how AI-powered ETL is the new way to solve some of these problems. We'll take a deep dive into the various parts of the ETL process and how AI is improving them. We'll also look at how ETL pipelines are maintained, how the infrastructure for the ETL pipelines is managed, and how AI can improve some of those things. We'll look at some of the popular tools and platforms that are used for this, and we'll end with some practical examples and future trends. All right, so what is ETL? ETL is really the backbone of data warehousing and business intelligence. Organizations are accumulating vast amounts of data, and they need a way to report on it, turn them into actionable insights. And ETL helps with that by streamlining the process. All this raw information is consolidated and brought into a form that makes it usable for analysis and decision making. So what are the problems with traditional ETL systems? So one is, of course, complexity. So the extract part of it, for example, involves getting data out of a variety of different sources. These sources could be scattered. They could have data in a form that is not readily usable. Data extraction involves someone writing scripts. Of course, there are tools and platforms that can be used for this, but ultimately it involves getting a sense of what shape that data is currently in and getting it out. Of course, a lot of times the data could be just completely unstructured, and there is no non-AI way of doing this efficiently. Typically, it would involve a lot of human input, in terms of tagging the information, getting data points out of it. The data quality of the data as we get it out of these different systems and consolidate them could be low, because the shape of the data in due course would keep evolving. So the scripts that were originally written to extract the data might need to be tweaked on an ongoing basis, might develop problems on an ongoing basis. And of course, there could be scaling challenges, because it's hard to predict ahead of time what kind of infrastructure one needs to build the ETL pipeline. As the data volume grows or shrinks, your need for a specific level of infrastructure would also change. So there is ongoing sort of input and tweaking needed to what hardware is needed to run your pipeline. And all of this requires ongoing manual input and manual work. So, hello AI. So AI helps in two broad ways. Using AI, we can build a better pipeline by improving the way they extract, transform, and load steps of the pipeline work. Using AI, we can also improve the way the pipeline runs, meaning we can provision our infrastructure in a better way. We can monitor it in a better way. We can make sure it stays performant. All right. So let's look at the extract part of the process. So we know that the extract step involves getting data from all the different sources. This data may be in a variety of different formats and could have different schemas that needs to now be joined together to create a consolidated view of it. This is a manual process traditionally. Yes, you have tools for this. So it's not always scripting, although it could be scripting. There are visual tools that you can use, but ultimately someone with techno-functional knowledge needs to look at the different data sources and say what element is what and what is the best way to extract it. Of course, all this means that the processing speed for getting data out of those systems isn't as high as it could be because of all the manual input and because of all the different types of data that need to be extracted. So AI is a natural fit for doing this job, because AI can adapt to not just the different shape of data that it may be in at a given point, but how it's evolving. All right. Two high-level ways in which AI helps with this. One, AI is a natural fit for processing unstructured information. So if the data that we're getting is not structured or it is semi-structured, AI can make sense of it and help extract the different data elements or different data entities from it. AI is also good at looking at a data source whose structure you may not know. So for example, there may be a web page or a PDF document or document of another kind, which has some kind of a structure that may change with time. But AI is a natural fit for figuring out that structure so that data can be extracted from it in an optimal way. So in terms of transformation, so a typical ETL pipeline has a bunch of transformation steps where we're looking for problems with the data. We're looking for data that might be missing or in an incorrect format or an unexpected format. AI can handle all those things. So for example, using AI, we can build a model for what the data should look like. And if the data is in a different shape or has different values that are outside ranges that they typically are in, then AI can flag them. AI can also notice that some data that is typically present is not present, or some data that should be present is not present. AI is also good at handling data that may be available but in a non-standard format. So AI can do mapping from the current format to the expected format, so it can be extracted. AI can also identify that certain data ranges or certain data values are outside their expected range, outliers. So AI can identify those things. And of course, AI can also put a human in the loop if needed. So if there is something that are so outside the range that AI doesn't know how to handle it, then it's possible to build it in a way so that AI pulls in a human being to say, hey, look at this. This is something that I don't know how to handle. What do I do? All right. Also, while loading the data, it can figure out the right infrastructure that is needed to perform the load operation. For example, if there is a data spike or there is less data than one typically is present in the pipeline, then AI can provision infrastructure or scale up and scale down the infrastructure in such a way so that data load step happens optimally. If there are any errors during the load process, then AI is typically able to handle things like if a data type is incorrect, if a number is stored as a string, things like that, then AI is able to figure out how to handle it so that it is loaded correctly. And of course, even in the load process, AI can smartly bring a human in the loop if the load process is not going as planned or if things are happening that AI is unable to handle. Okay, now let's look at some of the ways in which AI can help us run our pipeline in a better way. All right, so using AI, we can build a model for the kind of failures that one can see. For example, AI can put in logs and time series data from a variety of different sources and build a model for the kind of failures that one can expect in a certain situation. And then it can proactively flag it so that we know that a failure might happen or that there is a need for a human being to monitor certain parts of the process. So it can figure out these patterns by looking at information from a variety of sources, from logs, from sensor data, and it can identify patterns and raise these kind of flags. Using AI, we can do some of these things proactively that would typically happen in a traditional pipeline retroactively when something goes wrong. Right? And then using all these signals, AI can figure out what the right level of infrastructure is for running a pipeline. So it can, for example, suggest that some compute needs to be scaled up or scaled down, or storage needs to be scaled up or scaled down, because the data that is coming through the pipeline is more or has a shape that is different from what it typically is. Right? So in this way, AI can help identify bottlenecks and help our pipeline run smoothly. Of course, this also helps with cost optimization because with AI, we can right size our AI pipeline, our ETL pipeline infrastructure. So we're not over provisioning or under provisioning. Okay. So there are a number of different tools and platforms that are available today. All of this doesn't need to be built by hand. So here's a small snapshot of some of the popular tools that exist out there. And depending upon what we are trying to achieve or rather what we are trying to focus on, we can pick different tools. So for example, there's a proprietary tool like AWS Glue, which of course works with AWS. But if that's where our solution is, then AWS Glue gives us a variety of different capabilities. We can create our models, do mapping, and a number of steps of our pipeline can be hosted and automated using AWS Glue. If we want to go the open source route, Airbyte is an excellent tool that also lets us do data processing. We can create models. We can process unstructured information using Airbyte. All right. So yes, so how can we get started with it? So one obvious low-hanging fruit that we can incorporate in our ETL pipelines is the use of sentiment analysis. So if we are dealing with unstructured information that doesn't have sentiment data, then there are a variety of different tools and algorithms that we can use to tag the incoming data, or even if it is semi-structured, we can tag it with sentiment data that subsequent steps in our pipeline can then use. We can also look at using AI to plug in holes that may be in our data. For example, some information that may be missing can be plugged in using AI. An excellent use case for AI in pipelines is fraud detection. Most of us would have faced a situation where our credit card provider suddenly says, "Hey, this transaction can't go through because it looks fraudulent." So how do they know? How do they know it looks fraudulent? It's because they're able to, because they have so much information that they're able to see that, hey, for this user, this is typically where transactions are made, or this amount ranges is where the transaction typically lies in. And then if it's something outside that, then they can flag it. So that's another example of using anomaly detection to detect if a fraud is happening. All right. So let's come to the end. AI is a natural fit for making our ETL pipelines better, for running them in a better way. Of course, some things need to be kept in mind. Security. So dealing with AI in a way that the data that we store with our AI model is only accessible to certain users is something that needs to be paid attention to. Right? We shouldn't just throw our data into AI and say, "Hey, handle it." Security safeguards need to be built into it so that the right users are able to access the right data. Building these systems, of course, requires newer skill sets. So everybody needs to understand AI, needs to learn how to incorporate AI in our day-to-day work. AI-powered automation is super useful for all kinds of organizations, not just ETL, but AI-powered workflows enable so many different use cases. For example, it's possible to create workflows that have some human steps, some AI steps, and some sort of imperative programming steps. And most workflows of the future are going to be some hybrid of human AI and imperative steps. Of course, AI also is a natural fit for real-time analytics. Rather than the traditional approach of accumulating data in a warehouse, processing it, and generating report from it, AI is able to extract information from large amounts of data with much less pre-processing that a traditional ETL system would need. All right, so we've come to the end. I hope you enjoyed this little talk, and I hope you find it useful as you build out your next ETL system. Thank you.